Well, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's a totally glamorous life. I think people don't really understand how hard we work. I mean, everybody on the show.
It is compelling. I loved applause. I loved people saying, "You're good." It was the first time I'd ever gotten that.
For a whole generation, Friday nights in Hazzard County had a sound to them. An engine winding out, a car leaving the ground, the General Lee catching air on CBS, and a mechanic named Cooter with a tow truck who was always somewhere in the middle of it. That man was Ben Jones, and on Sunday, August 9th, he died at home in Virginia at the age of 84. What happened in the hours afterward is the part worth staying for. Tom Wopat posted a tribute that undid something the cast had spent more than 40 years turning into a running joke. He said out loud what every kid watching the Dukes of Hazzard in 1981 already believed. This is the full story of that week and what it finally settled. Take a second to like this video and subscribe. The last thing anybody expected that weekend was news out of Virginia. There had been no announcement, no hospital watch, no long illness for fans to follow. The week before had been ordinary. Then it was Sunday afternoon and it was over. Ben Jones died on Sunday, August 9th, 2026, at his home in Virginia. He was 84 years old. The announcement came from his wife of more than 3 decades, Alma Viator, in a post on Facebook that same afternoon. She wrote that she had lost the love of my life and that her husband had died from what she called a massive heart attack. The detail that carried across every Wire story afterward was the ordinariness of it. Viator described her husband at home, resting in his favorite chair, waiting for the Atlanta Braves to come on and whoop the Yankees. That was the last thing on his mind. A ball game against New York. By Sunday evening, the confirmation had moved through NBC News, CNN, Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, and Fox News Digital, all of them working from the same Facebook post. Rappahannock County Sheriff Connie Compton confirmed the death separately. There was no ambiguity and no waiting period, which is unusual for a death that arrives on a Sunday with no prior reporting behind it. Vitor's post did not read like a press release. She wrote that her husband had lived a rich and full life, that he had loved and been loved by a great many people, and that he would be missed. The punctuation belonged to a widow, not to a publicist. There is something worth sitting with in the shape of that afternoon. This was a man who had spent nearly 40 years organizing enormous public gatherings around a television show. He filled fairgrounds and museum parking lots. He stood on stages with a guitar in front of crowds who had driven 6 and 7 hours to see him. The death itself had none of that in it. No stage, no crowd, no schedule. A chair, a television, and a baseball game he did not get to watch. The loudest man in Hazzard County went out in the quietest room in the house. Tom Wopat did not wait. He posted before most of the trade outlets had their obituaries filed, and he sent the same statement to Fox News Digital, which is what made it the version every subsequent story quoted. The photograph he chose was not a publicity still from the show. It was the two of them on a stage together, arm in arm, taken decades after the cameras stopped rolling. The statement opened with a line that quietly counts the losses. Wopat wrote that the cast had lost another integral part of itself that day. Not a supporting player, not a fan favorite, a part of the thing. He went on to describe his friend as a fierce advocate for the best of what the entertainment business has to offer, and said he would be sorely missed. Then came the part that stopped people. Wopat wrote that Denver Pyle used to say to Ben Jones over and over the same 4 words. Pyle played Uncle Jesse, the patriarch of the family, and the joke ran for years. Whenever Jones would slide into the family register, Pyle would push back and remind him where the line was, and then Wopat closed the post by saying that it felt like they had lost a Duke cousin. Read those 2 sentences together and the thing turns over. The first sentence is the joke the cast told for 40 years. The second sentence is Wopat throwing it out. He did not soften it and he did not hedge it. He put the running gag on the page for one last airing, and then he stepped over it in the same breath. That is not a condolence. That is a reclassification, delivered on the day of the death, in public by the surviving lead. Nobody demoted Cooter Davenport from honorary to actual because of a heart attack. The heart attack is only what made saying it out loud unavoidable. The joke only works if everybody in the room already knows the answer. That is what a joke like that is for. It gives a group of people a way to say the sentimental things sideways, over and over, for decades, without any of them ever having to say it straight. Consider what the show itself did with the character. Cooter Davenport ran the only garage in a county where the entire premise was that cars got wrecked every single week, and between Boss Hogg's schemes and the Duke boys' driving, there was never a shortage of work. The press covering the show, then and since, kept reaching for the same two words. They called him an honorary Duke. The show leaned on that framing too. He was in the family without being in the family, which is exactly the kind of arrangement that generates a running gag. Ben Jones appeared in well over 140 episodes across all 7 seasons on CBS, from 1979 through 1985. He came back for the reunion movie in 1997 and again for Hazzard in Hollywood in 2000. Denver Pyle was there for the first of those. He died the same year it aired. So the joke had a shelf life. Pyle could push back on the family claim for as long as Pyle was alive to push. After that, the line survived as a memory the cast passed around, and Wopat was one of the few people left who could still quote it accurately. Which is the mechanism worth understanding here. Wopat did not have to explain the joke to anybody. He reproduced it in full on the day his friend died and let it do the work it had always done. And then he broke it. A 40-year running gag has a punchline. This one just took until August of 2026 to arrive. For most of the past decade, when a member of the Hazzard County cast died, the announcement did not come from a studio or an agency. It came from Ben Jones, usually on the Facebook page of his own museum, usually within hours, usually written by hand. When James Best died in 2015, Jones was the one who put up the notice. Best had played Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane for the entire run. Jones wrote that the work would outlast the man and that having worked alongside him for all those years had been one of the blessings of his life. When Rick Hurst died in June of 2025, Jones did it again. Hurst had played Deputy Cletus Hogg, and he had been scheduled to appear at Cooter's place the following week. Jones confirmed the death to Fox News Digital and to the New York Times, and then he wrote the public piece himself. He opened it by saying it did not seem right. He noted that he had known Hurst for more than 45 years and could not remember a minute of that time when the man had not left him laughing. He said Hurst had a heart the size of Texas. He also put one phrase in quotation marks, the way people do when they are borrowing language that does not quite fit. He wrote that an unexpected death is harder to process, which was, at the time, a thing happening to somebody else. Look at the pattern across those 10 years and it becomes a job description. James Best, Rick Hurst, Sorrel Book, who played Boss Hogg and went before both of them. Every anniversary event, every reunion, every piece of news the fan base needed. One man, 3 museums, and a Facebook page functioning as the last press office a canceled 1985 television show still had. Then, on August 9th, the news was about him, and the page went quiet, and somebody else had to write it. That is the part that landed hardest on the people who had been following those announcements for years. There was no Ben Jones post about Ben Jones. The acting job lasted 6 years on the air. What came after it lasted almost 40. Jones built Cooter's place into 3 locations, one in Luray, Virginia, which he opened in 2017 and lived near, one in Nashville, one in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Each one paired a gift shop with a museum, and the museums did not charge admission. That decision is not a small one. It meant a family could pull off the highway, walk through the whole thing, buy nothing, and leave. He ran it that way for years. He also helped create Dukes Fest, which pulled cast members and fans into the same field on the same weekend, at a scale that most canceled shows never come close to reaching. And on ordinary Saturdays in Luray, he was simply there, greeting people at the door, singing with Cooter's garage band, standing for photographs with grandparents who had watched the show in first run and grandchildren who had found it on cable. If Waylon Jennings had given the show its voice, Ben Jones gave it a front door. Jones was asked in a 2015 interview what made the Dukes of Hazzard work, and his answer did not go anywhere near television craft. He said the show made people happy, and that it did not matter what color the audience was, or where they came from, or what their politics were. That is a fairly precise description of what he then spent 4 decades trying to reproduce in person, in 3 buildings, on a 2-lane highway in the Shenandoah Valley. Most actors from a hit series spend the rest of their lives being asked about it. This one built a place where people could come ask. The resume does not run in a straight line, and the parts of it that do not fit are the parts that explain the man. He was born Benjamin Lewis Jones on August 30, 1941, in Edgecombe County, North Carolina, and grew up in Portsmouth, Virginia. He went to East Carolina and then to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where, by his own account in his autobiography, he got involved in acting and in the civil rights movement at roughly the same time. He titled that book Redneck Boy in the Promised Land and subtitled it The Confessions of Crazy Cooter. The New York Times obituary was direct about the years before the show. Jones struggled with alcoholism, was arrested a number of times, and was divorced 3 times before he was cast. He never hid any of it, which is part of why the redemption arc in his life reads as earned rather than manufactured. In 1988, he ran for Congress in Georgia's 4th District and won by 20 points. He was re-elected in 1990 and served through January of 1993. Redistricting then took the seat out from under him, and his next race against Newt Gingrich he lost. The later years brought a public argument he never backed away from. Jones became one of the loudest defenders of the Confederate battle flag that had been painted on the roof of the General Lee, and he defended the show itself as a morality tale and as an honest picture of Southern life. Speaking at his 80th birthday celebration in Luray, he told the crowd flatly that they were not going to be made ashamed of their ancestors. He described himself as a redneck. He said in 2020 that he was weighing a vote for a Republican president if he can behave himself, which, from a man who had served 2 terms as a Democrat, is a sentence with a lot of miles on it. Agree with him or not, the through line is visible from any angle. The same stubbornness that got him elected in a district nobody expected him to win is the stubbornness that kept him arguing about a flag on a car roof 30 years later. By Tuesday, the tributes had settled, and what they had in common was not the usual industry language. Catherine Bach posted on August 11th. She had played Daisy Duke, and she does not post often. She wrote that she was going to miss him terribly, called him one of the greatest human beings who ever lived, and thanked him for being a steady presence in her life alongside his wife. Then she quoted something he had once said to her about human beings having a spiritual experience rather than the other way around, and signed off with 2 words that read like a promise rather than a goodbye. There was already an event on the calendar. Cooter's Place in Luray had advertised a celebration for the 29th of August honoring Jones and his fellow cast member, Sonny Schroyer, with Wopat and Bach both promoted as attending. That gathering was booked while he was alive. It is going to happen anyway, and it is going to be something other than what was advertised. Which brings it back to the sentence that started all of this. For 47 years, the arrangement was that Cooter Davenport was close to the family without being in it. The show called him Honorary. The press called him Honorary. Denver Pyle made a whole running joke out of holding the line, and every single person watching the Dukes of Hazzard in 1981 understood that the line was decorative. It took a Sunday afternoon in Virginia for a surviving Duke to say it plainly in public. Not honorary, not adjacent, a cousin. Ben Jones spent his last 4 decades keeping a fictional county alive for people who needed somewhere warm to go on a Friday night. He wrote the goodbyes for the ones who went ahead of him. He kept the doors open and did not charge admission. And when it was finally his turn, the man who had been telling him for 40 years that he was not really a duke was gone, and the man who was left decided the joke had run long enough. That, in the end, is what a family is. Not a bloodline. A group of people who eventually stop pretending. So Hazzard County is smaller this week, and the 3 of them who are left know it better than anybody. Ben Jones went from a garage in a fictional Georgia county to a real seat in Congress and back to a museum on a Virginia highway. And the thing his co-star chose to say about him was not about any of that. It was about family. Now, what do you think Denver Pyle would have made of that post? Did Cooter ever feel like a supporting character to you, or was he always one of them? And which Hazzard County episode are you going to put on tonight? Tell us in the comments and subscribe so you do not miss the rest of these.